Hello out there, welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Tonight's guest is a psychic medium and a paranormal investigator, and a previous guest on the show, back by popular demand. Her name's Kathryn Kauffman. She's back to talk about us a little more about the things that go bump in the night. How you doing tonight, Kathryn?
I'm doing really good. How are you, Matt?
Well, I'm so glad you you agreed to come back on here because, man, there was a lot of positive and overwhelming response to your previous show. So I appreciate you.
Awesome.
I'm really glad you took the time, and thank you for taking the time to come back on here and do this little shindig with us again.
No problem. Glad to spread the message.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I didn't realize that I had an audience for this kind of stuff, and apparently I learned something new about the audience every day. So
right,
and
there's a lot of people that have had paranormal experiences in their life, but they've never talked about it, or maybe they dismissed it and kind of maybe repressed it. But a lot of stuff I've been through really validates some of the experiences that people have had in the past.
Well, go ahead. This is your show, right? So we've got you back on here to talk to us about things that go bump in the night. So, elaborate on that some more, if you wouldn't mind, those past experiences.
So, we talked about the doppelganger incident on the last show.
Correct.
And I do a lot of investigations and then the house cleansing after the investigation. And sometimes, it doesn't work. And, when you watch stuff on TV, it always works. They get rid of the bad guy or they get rid of the ghost or whatever. But, in real life, some things you cannot overcome and you can't get rid of. And so there's a couple of incidents that we had that, unfortunately, I had to tell the owners of the property that they needed to move. And, that's a very serious thing. Fortunately, in both cases, the people were renting. So, it is a big deal to move, but it wasn't like they had a lot of financial stuff invested in the property.
Right. They didn't have a lot of financial losses to take for doing that.
Exactly.
Let me ask you a question then about that. So these people moved into this specific location, and then there was obviously something that went down there. There was a presence or something like that was felt that you were called in, right?
Right. So in the first incident, it was a couple. They were not married, but they were living in a rented house in a location close to Lexington. And the lady that had called me relayed a lot of paranormal activity, poltergeist activity, pictures falling off of the walls, lots of sounds, bangs, things like that. So we agreed to go out and attend to the property. And as soon as we pulled up into the driveway, I knew immediately what was wrong. She thought that they were decorative stones in the yard.
Okay.
But they were pre-Civil War graveyard markers. So the house was actually built on a Civil War graveyard.
And that'll present a problem, I guess, huh?
Yes, because it is land that's dedicated to the dead. It is specifically sanctified and given to the dead. That's not a place where living people can reside.
Okay. Because it's sacred somehow, then, is what you're saying, because it's a resting place.
It's consecrated, it's sanctified as a dead space. And then we have all of these dead bodies that have been placed there in reverence, and then you have a house plopped down on top of it.
Right.
So what was happening is the front yard was full of the gravestones, and there was a pipe that went from the front yard directly into the house, and I think it was a water main. But that's just like, water conducts this electromagnetic energy that the spirits are made up of, or we're all made up of, and that's just like a shuttle right into the house.
Yep.
Not that they need the shuttle, but any conduit does help amplify the energies. And so, of course, the activity was phenomenal in there. We did get an EVP from the downstairs closet.
EVP.
And
what's an EVP?
Electronic voice phenomena.
Okay.
And we use digital recorders, and that's when you're recording and you'll pick up sounds that no living person or thing is creating. It's an imprint of the energy that is, in the old days when we first started at EVP, we did that with the magnetic tape recorder. And so I feel like the EVPs were better then because it was a magnetic tape, and as spirits were electromagnetic. So I feel like some of the EVPs back then were a lot better than they are now on the digital recorders, but they're still pretty good. So we had a recorder set up in the downstairs closet, and we were all upstairs. We want to make sure there's no contamination of the area. And so on replay of the recorder, we heard two entities. One was kind of mumbling, and the other one clearly said aloud, like,
like be
don't
quiet.
Talk, be quiet.
Yeah.
Right, because we were there, and they know you're there. So we went ahead and did a cleansing on the home, and we told the homeowners, this will keep it at bay for just a little while until you can get out, but it's going to come back and it's going to get worse probably because you're on land that's not supposed to be for living people.
Now, is this something that is strictly location based then, or is it location based plus the people specific, certain people that have to sort of be there? So, Mike, I guess what I'm saying is if somebody else moved into that house, would they necessarily suffer the same phenomena? Would they have to deal with the same type of phenomena?
It's possible that they probably would, but a lot of people can block a lot of paranormal activity. They don't even connect with it. And it's, that's all brainwave based, how receptive you are, how long you're in alpha or theta wave, how much of the time. Somebody who's more beta wave driven may not notice as much activity. They may notice something, but just kind of dismiss it. And they may be able to live there just fine, but there were so many graves there that we found. I don't feel like anybody there would be comfortable or have a good life there.
So this would be something that someone who's maybe would consider themselves to be more empathic, is that a good word, would pick up on, and people who are maybe less empathic wouldn't see it, is kind of how you're... Right.
They wouldn't notice, like there would still be phenomena, but they wouldn't notice it as much. They would find some explanation for it and dismiss it most of the time.
Yeah.
There are times when you have a beta wave driven person who's very logical and cognitive and scientific, and they're going to see something that will just blow their socks off. So, you just can't tell exactly what's going to happen. I don't know if the property is inhabited today. That would be something I might want to go back and take a look at that and see.
Yeah.
But the second property, and this was a townhouse, and this was a really interesting case. So this was a townhouse, and it was a woman that had called, and she relayed lots of paranormal activity in the house, around, pictures coming off the wall. That seems pretty classical, you know. I'm always pretty skeptical until I go in and actually feel of the property. One interesting thing that she relayed was that there were pools of ice cold water forming in the kitchen floor. So, you know, just that specificity I was very intrigued by, because that's not something that people usually think to make up, you know. And so I took my assistant out there, and one of the first things that I do is try to survey the property outside to see if there's anything that would be contributory to the activity inside the home, like, you know, water sources, graveyards, you know, electrical transducers and things outside. So there wasn't anything like that outside of the townhome. And I usually like to tell my assistant kind of what I'm thinking so that she knows where to take pictures and what to focus on. So before we went in, I pointed out the upstairs window and I said, okay, Misty, this is a place, that's the area where I'm feeling a lot of stuff. And if that's where she relays a lot of the activity, we've got huge problems. So we went in, talked to the homeowner, and I said, you know, is your bedroom this window upstairs that's above us? And she said, yes. And you know, my heart just sank, because I was like, oh, we have some huge problems here, because that's where I had, you know, felt the most amount of energy. So the first thing that we do is go and just do kind of a sweep of the property and see what information I can gather. Then I go and present that information to the homeowner, and then we talk about what kind of things can be done, if anything can be done. So we did a sweep of the downstairs. I really didn't get anything. Even though, you know, she had relayed this phenomena of the ice cold water in the kitchen, I didn't really feel anything. So we went upstairs. I went to her young son's room. There really wasn't anything there. Rounded the corner, and as soon as I entered the bathroom, I perceived this dead girl in her 20s, dark hair, very, 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 very angry, very hostile, would not talk to me, would not communicate with me, standing next to the bathtub. I did perceive a lot of blood, and I never tell Misty exactly what I'm getting. If I see an entity, I will tell her, like, focus on this area. I feel like something might be there, take pictures here, but I don't give her too many details. So I turned to Misty because her eyes were big, and I was like, what are you getting here? And she said, I feel like somebody might have committed suicide here. And I said, yes, me too. So anyway, because this entity would not communicate with me, I just decided to go on through the bedroom and see what I could get in the bedroom. What I felt in the bedroom was that this female entity had been feeding off of the owner at night to try to regain energy, because I feel like she had committed suicide and then regretted her decision and was trying to draw this living female energy from the owner to exist or to feed off of.
Okay.
So after we got the sweep done, we went back downstairs, and, you know, we both told her this is what we've got. You know, we took pictures and recordings. Of course, there wasn't anything on that. So she says, well, let's try and do a cleansing. So I said, yes, we can do that. I feel like she may have committed suicide in the bathtub. And so I had Misty go back up to the bathtub, and I said, just focus on this area, because this is where I feel it the most, which was the incline on the distal side of the bathtub, you know, opposite the
drain. Yeah. Yep.
Right. And that's the only area that we got a high electromagnetic field reading. Now, there were no outlets next to the bathtub. There weren't any other electrical sources. It was a condo, so I don't know what was on the other side of the wall, but I'm assuming that what was on the other side of the wall was a mirror to the bathtub that we were looking at, which didn't have any electrical, sources. So I was pretty confident there wasn't anything that we could have been picking up that, would have been a false positive. And it was just in like one circular area on that incline of the bathtub. So that's concerning, because that may mean there's a physical tie to that area. If she had committed suicide and her energy had been imprinted there, that's a physical tie or a direct portal to that area. Sometimes you can't get rid of those.
Okay.
So I told the owner, we'll do what we can. We'll go through and do the cleansing. And then it dawned on me right before we were ready to do the cleansing that the areas that the ice cold water appeared in the kitchen were directly below the bathtub.
Yeah, and that makes sense too, because
yes.
bathrooms are almost always on top of kitchens and vice versa and stuff because of the plumbing. Okay.
Right. So when I do a cleansing, I always have the homeowner participate, unless they're physically not able. Number one, I think they need to be vested in the procedure. Number two, I'm going to teach them how to do it, because these things have to be done repetitively. The energy that you lay down with the cleansing attenuates. And if the owner doesn't know how to do this again, then they're at the mercy of having to go and get someone to do it for them. So it's been my big soapbox to teach them how to do this so that they can empower themselves and take control of their living space.
Okay.
So we all go in a line to do the cleansing, and I particularly use a Tibetan singing bowl, because the vibratory resonance that comes off of a singing bowl will go through closets, through walls. It's not stopped. Like if you are using a smudge stick, the smoke may not permeate all the way into the closet or all the way into the basement. And spirits usually will pull back to areas where there's very, very low traffic, so that there's no movement through their mass, because that is very uncomfortable for them. But the singing bowl will resonate through everything, so there's nowhere to hide. And the resonant energy interrupts their energy field. And it does make them uncomfortable to where they will want to leave. So we're going through the house with the singing bowl, and I have the homeowner in front of me, and she is right next to the steps, and we're fixing to go downstairs. And she starts freaking out. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? She says, I hear things being thrown downstairs. So I put her aside and went to the top of the stair landing, and it sounded like someone was throwing several magazines across the living room, but no one was down there. So I looked at her and I said, look, that's a good sign. It means that this is working. So let's not stop. Let's keep going. So I went ahead of everybody downstairs. There were things all over the floor. There were books and magazines that had been flung out all over the floor. We went ahead and cleared the downstairs, cleared out through the front door, and everything was very, very quiet afterwards, okay? So we all sat down and talked about, what we experienced and what happened and what our expectations were. And the homeowner was asking me, well, do you think that this worked? And I was trying to tell her, I don't know. Only time will tell. We'll see. And just as that came out of my mouth, the toilet lid upstairs slammed, just bang, as if to say,
I'm still here.
I am still here.
Yeah, I ain't going anywhere.
So the homeowner freaks out, and she's like, I have to get out of here, and you guys can't leave until I leave. And I'm like, I'm going to help you pack, let us help you get some stuff together, go to your mom's. And we got all the dogs together and the son and got them some clothes and got them out of there. But, she had to move because that's something you can't fix.
Right.
But it was just the slam, that loud slam of the toilet seat was pretty spectacular. I mean, it was just wham, and we all looked at each other and went, oh my God.
So I tell you, I got like 3 questions going through my head right now. I'm trying to figure out which one to ask you about first. So,
okay.
There is something to this, and we talked about this a little bit right at the beginning of the show before we hit record, right? But there's a resonance here, and when you were telling me just this, this story. Everybody has had that moment where something really creepy has happened to them, where they've had the hair stand up on the back of their neck, or they've seen something that they just, okay. So when you're in the middle of the woods at night, right, and you hear something that you can't recognize, you're on the move. I mean, you're so there's something to that, right? There's something visceral, primal. Small brain.
Right.
There's something in there that, and that's why I think everyone relates to this so much, is because everyone has that has had that moment, at least one of them, right?
Right. I mean, how many of us have been poking around graveyards after 10 p.m. just, for a scare? Lots of kids do that.
Right. Only those of us that were ever teenagers, right? So that, all of us.
But I mean, that's something. Now I'm 58, but that's something in my teens that we did, because there wasn't as much technology. There wasn't as much, you had to find something to do for fun. And ghost hunting, or going out to try to see a ghost, was, that was really big back then.
Oh yeah, going to haunted houses and stuff like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But now I get to do it for real.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we have video proof that you do it for real, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
And let me segue there. Holy cow. That video you shared with me, I put it up on Instagram and stuff. I put it back out there for you. Something's going on there, right?
What did you think about that light anomaly that actually pulled my hair up in that video?
And the swirl, the swirl of smoke or vapor or something that's happening there at the same time.
It's light, because remember on the last show we were talking about how you're made up of light.
Right.
And, it's infrared and ultraviolet light, and those things, you can't really capture them in daylight, not as much.
Right.
Sometimes you can, but more so at night or in dim lighting. It's very easy for the camera to detect these things, and you can't see them with your eyes either. But so what you're seeing on that video is light. Now, I have noticed that I have several videos that when a spirit is moving slow, it will be an undulating, like, ribbon of light that twists and turns, like you saw.
So more like a distortion or like a mirage or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I have another theory on that, but when spirits are moving fast, it seems like that light condenses into that spherical shape, and it moves faster in that spherical shape. Now, what this undulating light reminds me of, and this is just my opinion, but it reminds me of the ribbon of DNA. So I was thinking,
a double helix.
Yeah, is that what bonds with the physical DNA when you undergo conception? Is the light bonding with that physical, and then they solidify together? And then when you pray, that light separates from the DNA as it contracts through the body.
When you die. So it connects into like the physical. And you know, what you're describing, that theory you're describing, is supported by a lot of ancient texts that kind of surmise the same kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. So, just, me, I'm always trying to figure stuff out because, if I can't explain it to myself, I can't explain it to anybody else. But as that light bonds with the physical DNA, and then as this being grows, the spirit just kind of, I feel like, continues to grow along this neurological web as the body gets larger and larger.
Okay.
And then at the point of death, the energy recedes. The energy actually is pulled from the extremities, and it recedes and it concentrates
right
into the chest or the head.
Yep.
And so that just seems really natural to me, and it makes sense to my mind.
Yeah. I think, have you ever heard of, you were talking earlier about how you think that the energy moves more easily in a spherical shape, right? Or the light moves more.
It seems like when they're moving faster, it contracts into that spherical orb and moves that way.
Okay. There's when
we're capturing it, when it's slowed down or it's moving slower, it seems like it folds out into that helical shape.
Right. It's funny because what that reminds me of was when I was in the Navy, they used to fly these airplanes that hunted for submarines, and they were propeller driven aircraft. These big straight winged airplanes look more like something out of World War II. Okay, but they're called P3s, and they had this equipment in it called magnetic anomaly detection. They called it MAD.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what this did was this actually sort of measured the gravitational fields around the Earth and could detect if like a submarine was moving through it. It would detect the anomaly and say, oh, there's something big in metal, because it would distort these magnetic fields. Okay, so that's how they hunt for submarines. And it did other things too, like it dropped buoys that had like sonar buoys and things like that. But there was a phenomenon with people that were in that community that they talked about sort of in hushed tones. And the phenomenon was that sometimes when they would be flying these missions, and these are airplanes that have a crew of people on them. So think like passenger plane full of electronic equipment. It's kind of what it is, right? And there's an aisleway that goes right down through the center of the airplane. And sometimes when they'd be flying these missions, they would swear to this, that this ball of lightning would come out of the pilot's throttle console and would literally move through that right down the center of the airplane, and would go right through the back of the airplane, and then it was assumed out the magnetic anomaly. There's a big antenna that sticks out the back of these airplanes, right? So there's this there's this phenomenon they call ball lightning. It's a legit.
Yes, I've read about that.
Okay, so I wonder if there's a correlation between what you're talking about with the energy just naturally seeking sort of that spherical point. If there's so what I'm comparing that to is sort of the physics of what you're discussing. You're saying that you're finding that there seems to be a correlation between these things, and I'm saying, have you ever considered that there's also a correlation in some of this other stuff too that's also being measured, and this is a phenomenon. Like no one knows what causes it.
Like that may be a natural pathway. For energy, and it doesn't matter what the origin of the energy is.
Right.
If it's electromagnetic, it may be a natural pathway for that electromagnetic energy to follow. And on some investigations years ago, we had gotten plasma balls coming up out of the ground and making a poof sound. I still have that on DVD somewhere in my stuff, but and it was green colored,
Okay.
And we were in a graveyard.
I heard that about the ball lightning too. It wasn't white. There was I think it was green. People said it was green. Yep. Yeah.
Right. What we captured was green, which I found very, very interesting. Now the phenomena that I showed you on the video is white.
Yep.
In color, and if you noticed, it did pick my hair up and pull my hair up in the back.
Right. Yeah, it was.
So people are asking me, why didn't you react to that? The location that we were at was a haunted house, and like a commercial haunted house. And in haunted houses, they have the strings coming down from the ceiling that you walk through.
Oh, right. Yep.
So I thought I was just walking through and got one of those things hung on my hair. So I didn't really react to it at all.
Right. Yes.
So
now, Phil, kind of give us the backstory of that video. Obviously, you said it's a commercial haunted house, so they do some sort of seasonal tours and things through this place.
Right. So there's some friends of ours that started a commercial haunted house, and we helped. My husband and I helped them get it started back in 2005. We just kind of put it together in the backyard and had a lot of fun, and they decided to turn it into a business. Well, so these are friends of mine that we used to go investigating with. I did some consulting work for Kentucky Paranormal Investigations back then, and that was our group, and we went on a lot of investigations. But some of the things that we went on the investigations in, some of the places got torn down, and there were pieces of these places that were put into the haunted house, into the commercial haunted house.
Okay.
And so it was actually, really a real haunted house, but nobody knew that. So I always go out every year to help out a little bit, be it, doing readings or whatever else, scaring people dressed up in costume. And then, so a few years back, we went out there and I noticed this spirit down the trail from me. It was a middle-aged man, and I couldn't tell whether it was one of the actors or whether it was a spirit, if that's how tactile it looked. And then I figured out that is a spirit, that's not a real person. So I asked the owner, this friend of mine, I said, did you know about this person that's here? And he said, yeah, I think that several people have seen that out here before. And I said, can we do an investigation out here? And that's when we took the cameras, and I had a student I was training at the time, and I wanted to take them on a walkthrough. And so we were filming it for the benefit of the student, and just to see if we could catch anything. And there were several other things that we got in addition to the clip that is posted. So we did get a black mass that moved in between me and the camera in one of the other rooms of the haunted house, and some more light anomalies, and I'll send those to you later. But in all, I felt that this spirit is just kind of bound there to the land, and they didn't really want me to help them, but they're not really causing any problems or doing anything. They're just kind of hanging out there. So, it's very interesting.
Enjoying the afterlife.
Well, some people, I feel like in this person's case, they did some bad stuff,
Okay.
And a lot of people don't want to transition or cross over completely because they have fears of, some kind of repercussions
Judgment.
for what they've done, right?
Yeah.
And so they just kind of linger in between because that's a safe space for them.
Do you think that those spirits, as it were, then maintain their, and we talked about this a little bit last show, right? But they maintain that individuality. Mm-hmm. So do they also maintain their prejudices, biases, and judgments?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I've got a perfect example of that. And it's so funny because, you know, the way that I do a mediumship is I don't ask who a person wants contact with. That's the test of the reading. So what I do is I do a theta wave meditation for like an hour, and then I channel write everything that I'm getting on who's coming through for the person that I'm reading for. You know, what they said, what they look like, what they showed me, you know, and there's usually at least 3 or 4 people that come through for each person I read for. So I had this lady come in, and I had channeled through this woman, and the woman made it very clear to me that she did not appreciate what I did. She thought that I was wrong for doing it, and that she really didn't want to talk to me, but she was going to do it for the benefit of the lady that was coming.
Okay.
When the lady came in for the reading, you know, I'm always apprehensive when it's kind of negative to deliver the information, but you know, you have to anyway, because that's what you've gotten. So I told her, I said, okay, here's the lady that came through. She said she didn't like me. She didn't like what I do. She thought I was wrong. She didn't appreciate anything that I was doing, but that she was going to talk to me anyway, just for your benefit. And this is what she said, blah, 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 blah. Come to find out, that was her aunt, and her aunt had a PhD in theology.
Oh, okay.
That is the perfect example of prejudice in the afterlife.
Well, and you know, I'd written a question down here while we were talking. You had mentioned 2 things earlier. You had used the words when we were talking about the ice cold puddles of water in the kitchen. Okay, you said that seemed really strange to me. That didn't seem like something that was made up. And
right,
I want you to I want to pull that out a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind. Let's talk about that. So that turn of phrase there indicates to me then that you must deal with stuff then that's made up.
Yeah, I do a lot. There are a lot of people that will call in just for attention, you know, or you know, maybe they're imagining, but you know, most of the time I would say is for attention, just to get a team out there to you know, make it exciting and scary. And
well, what you guys do is really interesting and exciting. I mean, I can see why people get wrapped up. I mean, you guys do it because no one's writing a check for you to run out there and do that stuff, right? I mean, you're doing it because you love the discovery and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Well, now, in the beginning, in the first 20 years of doing it, I did do it for free, but that was to gain the knowledge and the experience. But now that I'm a professional, when someone calls me out to the property, it's for a medium discernment. Okay. So I'm using my skills as a medium to go in and discern exactly what's at the property. So I do charge for that. If I do need to do a cleansing, that's totally for free. And I do that while I'm out on the property, but I call it an on-site mediumship. So it's a mediumship. It's just I'm going there to do it rather than doing it in my office.
Okay. So there is so people are literally paying to have teams come out, and they're making it up. So they're sort of what you're kind of indicating that is there are people that are sort of willing to pay for the experience.
Right, exactly. Okay. And then there are mediums that blow things out of proportion.
Yeah.
And then I will have to go in and kind of straighten things out.
Yeah.
People tend to get sensationalized. You know, they'll imagine they'll feel, what they do is they'll feel something, and then they'll imagine, oh my God, there must have been a murder here, and it feels female, and I think this older man must have killed this girl. And that is so far from what actually happened.
Okay.
like not even in the same realm. When I go out to a property, I don't ask anything about it. I don't want to know because I do a better job if I don't know anything.
Okay.
I'm usually drawn immediately to the most significant space in the house. Like, if they know the history of the house, if the owners know the history of the house, and I'm drawn to a certain room right away, and then I'll say, this is what I see here. I see an older lady. I see that this was her favorite space. She's looking out of the window. This is her area. This is where her energy is. And then the owner can relate to me. Yes, that's what she looked like. This was her powder room. This was where she had her chair and her books, and it was her favorite space. See, I have to have validation of that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go around thinking, you're out of your mind. But, a lot of mediums will just go with their feeling and have no validation and give homeowners total information that's, have them in a panic for
Okay.
no reason.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So so you talked about this Tibetan bowl, and you gave that there's some resonance reasons why you particularly focus on that instrument. Okay.
Right.
And
right.
and now that it can be argued though that is also a religious tool. Okay.
Right.
So,
and it can be used as a religious tool.
Talk to me a little bit about sort of your perspective as it pertains to like ancient religions and things like that, as far as both their, sort of where their opinion was on spirituality and their tools of the trade, as it were, and things like that. What's your experiences with that?
Well, when I first started attempting the house cleansings, and this was back in the 90s. Back then we used sound, but it was like tambourines and cymbals. Okay, and I really didn't understand why we were using that. I was going to help a lady that works out of Frankfurt do a house cleansing, and it was told to me, we'll pray to the angels and we'll say prayers and we'll use these instruments. But I really didn't know the reasons why we were doing it. And then more often than not, it wouldn't work, see? And then I would be like, okay, there has to be something we're missing. So I started doing a lot of study about, well, who is the experts? Who are the experts in this? Certainly Christianity is quite new in the realm of spirituality, and so it doesn't seem like we're the real experts in this. The Tibetans, the Chinese, they're actually thousands of years of practice in this.
Right.
And so there must be something to what they're doing that has worked for thousands of years. And so I started looking into, okay, why is the singing bowl used? And then, I started realizing that, how we talked about in episode 1, when you try to chase a noise or when you try to run into a room where activity is happening, it collapses because of that energetic web that you're disrupting.
Okay.
Well, the resonant vibration coming off of the bowl or the music or whatever you're using is disrupting that web of energy that's set up by whatever entity is in the environment. So then, it all makes sense to me then. That's why we're using this resonant energy. That's why it works. It goes through all walls where light, smoke, or whatever you're using can't go. It will permeate through that.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about missing any kind of space.
So
because you're covering all of it.
Is there any other tools of the ancient religions and things that you find actually are functional for what you do?
Yes, I have used a purba, on 3 occasions.
Okay, what's you got to help me out here. What's that?
It's a Tibetan instrument that's used to trap an entity. And it looks like a dagger. It's usually made from brass or silver. And it looks like a dagger with kind of a head on one end. And in the middle of it, it has like a chamber. And that's an instrument that's used to trap energy, to remove it from an area.
Okay. So is it something that how's it utilized?
Well, what you have to do is entice the entity to reside in the middle of the item. And then, like, you would encase it in something that would contain it, like consecrated salt or whatever. Or you may even thrust it down into the earth to ground that entity into the earth and out of the area that it's in.
Okay.
I've only used that 3 times. I don't feel like I'm really proficient at it because I feel like, there's no one to train me. There's no one to ask about that kind of thing. It's all done intuitively, and I'm really not sure that I'm doing it correctly, but it seemed to have worked. Well, in the 3 cases.
You're a little different. I mean, because you do stuff like take notes. You collect data. You're looking for, coalescence and things to have sort of. You're looking for some sort of. What am I trying to say here?
Validation.
Well, validation
is validation.
It's a big word, right? But it's looking for data to be repeatable and things like that, where you start to go, okay, now I kind of know what to start measuring or where to start looking and that kind of stuff.
Right. And unfortunately, there's no one that can train me in the proper way to use that.
Right.
But sometimes you go with your intuition and desperation to see if, maybe you can get it right.
Yeah. Well, that's how
help that person out.
You've sort of taken an interesting scientific-like approach towards a very touchy-feely kind of subject matter, right? So it's
right.
Neat how it all fits together. So, given that. The consideration by you then is that you approach this from the standpoint of energy, okay?
Right.
Where do you come down on the idea of things like cooperative mediumship? Where you remember? I don't know if you've ever heard of these folks called the Farseers that used to they would get together in like a collaborative, and each of them would discern pieces of information about things. They made movies about it, and there's a whole lot of stuff on the internet about it, but what they were doing felt very similar to what you do, from what I can understand.
Yeah, I've done a collaborative effort on a couple of missing person cases, and so what I did was the family reached out to me on this missing persons cases, and I reached out to local psychics we did a collaborative effort to try to discern what happened to the people involved. And then we gave that information to the families. Now, if somebody calls me for a missing person case, I don't want to do anything to hamper any investigation, so I won't get involved, actively unless the police say that it's okay.
Okay.
But if the investigation is cold and the family comes to me and says, can you give us any information? We've done this collaborative effort twice and given them information. It seems to be really good information, and but nothing has ever been solved from either one of those cases. But it was a collaborative effort between myself and 4 or 5 other people, and we did discern a lot of really good information that I think was valid.
Okay. So you've done the collaborative. You've worked with, so I didn't know if there was a. Do you feel that it's more effective when you do it collaboratively?
Yeah, I do, because it's amplification of the energy.
Right.
It's not just one person that's tapped into it, but several. And so where I may miss one detail, somebody else may catch that.
Sure.
You know, because they're looking at it, psychically looking at a different facet.
Okay.
Of that energy. So I think it is more accurate if it's a collaborative effort.
Now, the last time you were on the show, we talked about the doppelganger, but you left you left a cliffhanger, and we got to do the cliffhanger, and the cliffhanger was the flying oxygen tank, right?
Yeah, that's cliffhanger. So, I got some communication from an elderly lady in Lexington, and she lived in an apartment building close to Richmond Road. And we went out there to investigate. The clips that she sent me were extremely fascinating. The clips of video that she had captured on her phone were of poltergeist activity, and it was a glass top table with like a Sprite can that was twirling around on the glass top table. So of course that had me very intrigued. And when we got to the apartment, it's elderly lady. She was on oxygen. She had the full tanks were stacked up on the distal side of the living room across from the couch. And so we went in and surveyed the area. I really didn't pick up any specific entity there. There wasn't anything that I could communicate with there. But, you know, we're going through the motions of taking the pictures and taking the notes on the testimony and doing the recordings. And so, you know, after I went through the apartment, I really didn't detect anything. I sat down on the couch and I was talking to her and taking notes. And my husband was walking across the living room taking pictures. And on the other side of him were the stacked up full oxygen tanks. And if anybody has ever dealt with an oxygen tank, you know how heavy those things are. They're at least 20 to 30 pounds. Okay. And so just as he passed by me, one of the oxygen tanks from the distal side of the room levitated and was flung directly at me, missed David by inches, and fell right in front of me. And at that moment, I looked at the lady and I said, well, it's time to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that would have been the end of my ghost hunting anything ever again. That would have been the end of it right there.
But the funny thing was, David had managed to capture pictures of the oxygen tanks right before that happened. And they were all neatly stacked in that corner. It didn't fall. In fact, she had a plant or some little tree-like thing in between the oxygen tanks and him, and it had actually knocked that plant as it flew through the air towards me on the couch. And I feel like it was directed at me because the trajectory was right at me. And it could have hit David and really hurt him, but he had just gotten past it before it came up out of the corner. And it fell just a few inches from where I was sitting. So, you know, in the old days, I used to say that ghosts couldn't hurt you. And then from that moment on, I was like, oh, Kauffman, you've got to eat those words because that is so not true now.
A little crow sandwich, huh?
Yes, big crow sandwich.
So we obviously these spirits or these entities that you're dealing with can be violent and angry.
Yes, because remember when we were talking in the first episode about, you know, what your spirit is? It's kinetic energy. I mean, dead bodies don't move, so there's some kind of kinetic force that's leaving your body when you pass. And I think a lot of times spirits will move stuff and they don't realize, that kinetic force is going to fling that across the room or slam the door. Because it's been a few years. One of my best friends passed away. I knew that she was in the hospital, but I didn't know how critically ill she was. And I was downstairs pulling up carpet, and I had no clue that she had passed on that morning. And I had the door propped up with, a sandbag, and I was pulling the carpet up, and all of a sudden, the door pushed the sandbag out of the way and came at me fast. I put my hands out and grabbed the door, and I could feel a presence there, and I knew someone was there, but I couldn't feel like who it was. And in 5 minutes, her son called me to tell me that she had passed away unexpectedly. Now, this was someone who'd always was vegan, massage therapist. She was very fit, and it was very unexpected. And I think that her energy was so newly passed that she didn't know, like she would never slam the door on me. I know that. But I think that her kinetic energy was new in that spirit realm, and she was not aware of how the movement of the door would be.
So it was like it was an accident, but the intention was to get attention. Is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, the intent was to get my attention, but I did not feel like she knew how fast that door would move, because when you've newly lost your body, you don't know how your energy is going to affect things. You don't know how to move stuff. These things are things that you have to, it's like riding a bike. You got to learn those, and then you can ride the bike, then you can go. But when you have just lost your body, it's very disorienting, and you have to kind of learn everything over.
So it's like a completely new experience for these people. It's like is what you're saying, or these spirits, or these individuals.
Right. So, my suggestion to people, the best practice for dying is to practice astral projection or out-of-body experience. If you can master
you can practice that?
Yes, you can. You can learn it, and you can practice it. And that's the best experience for losing your body.
Okay. How does one practice this exactly? I mean, are there methods? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yes. I mean, there's books on astral projection. There are YouTube videos on how to do astral projection. There are tapes and CDs that you can get on the proper brainwave that you need to be in for astral projection. And that was one of the things that I have to be very careful about, because even as a child, my body has not been a well body. It's been sick a lot. And so even as a kid, when I would get pneumonia or something else really bad, I would find myself projected down the hallway. And I think it was a kind of a protective mechanism so that I could get out of that suffering for just a few minutes of relief, And so when I'm very, very ill, it happens spontaneously, and I'll be, in another room or down the hallway, and I'll be like, oh my God, you need to get back to your body, because you don't want to stay down here that long, or you may just not go back, So.
That's how it happens, You leave and don't come back. Dad went out for a pack of cigarettes. Haven't seen him in 30 years.
It's a different experience, because when you astral project, you're not seeing things with your eyesight, your regular eyesight, everything looks differently. It will look grainy, or it will look like out of focus, or it will even have a different hue. When I do it, sometimes it will have like an all blue hue to it. Things feel tactile, but it does feel really floaty and disassociative. It's not like I can't ever get a hold of anything. I can feel of stuff, but I can't really get a hold of it. So, and it is a practice skill, just like everything else that I do. And you can't make it happen. You can practice it. And then let's say you practice it for 6 months, you may get 2 astral projections. And so if you set your mind to astral projection, you've got to remember that you're not sensing things with the physical, and you're not looking at things with the physical eyes. You're not sensing things with the physical. It's energetically being transferred to your consciousness. So things don't feel the same. You're like, for me, everything is going to look grainy, or it will look like it has a blue cast or a blue hue to it.
Okay.
And I can certainly touch things, but I can't hold on to things. I can't pick things up in the astral. And so that's kind of frustrating, but I think it's really individualized in people what an astral projection feels like, smells, looks like, sees, because these are all things that are being sensed with the spirit now instead of the physical. And you may not get that many experiences through your practice, but they are extremely significant. And one of the things that I tested that meant the most to me, and this was a spontaneous projection. I had been to a group meditation. I was on the way home. Someone else was driving, and so I was just kind of meditating in the passenger seat. And I suddenly projected myself to my house, and I felt the wind from the back window was open, the back screen door, and I felt really floaty, and I felt myself floating in the living room, and the answering machine came on, and I heard someone leaving a message, and I heard what they said. And so I came back to myself and, exited out of the meditation. And when I got home, I went to the answering machine. The message was there. It was exactly who I had heard. And I was like, that was real.
Wow. That's
what I heard. So, from that moment, I knew that the experience was validated and real. I'm just so big on validation. I have to have it.
Right.
Because otherwise you're like, okay, I need a straitjacket. Take me away.
Well, I'm not sure we don't all need that anyway.
But, I'm starting to wonder about all these dimensions that are folded into ours and all the things. Oh, I've got to tell you about the body buffet before we leave for the evening. That is just huge. You're going to freak out when you hear this one. Now, I experienced something similar to what these people experienced. Now, as a paranormal expert, a lot of people will contact me about their experiences, wanting to know, what is this? What has happened? And so these were 8 accounts of totally different people that did not know each other, were not connected in any way. But before I received these calls or these accounts of these experiences, I'm going to tell you what I experienced, but I didn't put any creed to it until I heard these other people calling me and telling me about their experiences. So my husband and I went to Louisville to do one of the psychic shows up there, and we stayed in a hotel, and So during the night, I had this really horrible dream that this dark, huge creature was crawling out of the mirror and coming across the bed to attack me. And it had its hands on my chest and was pushing into my chest and like pulling the energy out of me. So, being experienced in lucid dreaming, I pushed it away, woke myself up, in a sweat, and I noticed that David was struggling in the bed beside me, So I thought, oh my God, I better wake him up, because he's having a nightmare. So I woke him up, and I'm like, "Are you okay? What are you dreaming about? What's going on here?" He said, this dark thing came out of the mirror and started to attack me, and I was over there behind the recliner chair trying to hide or get away from it. So I thought, okay, might have been an astral attack. We're okay. We'll just put it aside and continue on with work, and it'll be okay. So, in the next few months, I started getting accounts from these 8 different people of staying in a hotel, entities coming out of the mirror. They all had very similar descriptions. They were usually humanoid-looking kind of creatures with a more larger shoulder span, kind of demonic-looking with hands that had claws and horns and tails. The color range was anywhere from black to kind of a sickening yellow. And then only one person relayed the same kind of scenario of things coming out of the room or coming out of the mirror, but she relayed that it was an orb-like creature with multiple arms on it. And in each case, they relayed that this thing comes out of the mirror and either crawls up on them to either strangle them or steal their energy, suck their energy, or if they were in a hotel room with someone else, they saw it crawl up on top of them, on top of their companion, to draw the energy out of that person's body. So I was like, what is going on with this? And then, it dawned on me, okay, they're coming out of the mirrors. We know that mirrors are portals, right?
Okay.
Mirrors don't bend light. They absorb light and reflect a different light back at you. Okay, that's a big misconception. It's a different beam of light that's coming back at you from the mirror. So I feel like that these are maybe multi-dimensional type of things that are using the mirrors as portals. Now, if their energy, if energy is what they feed off of, what better place to get that energy than a hotel or motel, because you have fresh people coming in every day.
Yeah.
That's why when I did the YouTube video and my Monday night show, we called it the Body Buffet. I'm like, this is like a buffet. They get new people every day.
Right. Yeah,
to feed off of.
I travel a lot and sleep in hotels a lot, and I can tell you, there's been some hotels I've been into, and I'm like, boy, I don't know what happened in this room, but
the mirror is always at the end of the bed.
Yeah.
It's always at the end of the bed. It's like you can't escape it. It's right there. And
so do you think that these energies, like this vaporeal demon that you're discussing, do you think that these are people? Or do you think that there are energies that are other human, or they're not non-humans, but there are.
I think that they're extra dimensional, and I think that the extra dimensional, whatever they are, have figured out that we're an easy energy source.
Okay.
Now, I don't feel like they look like what they portray. It is interesting that all 8 people describe similar things in exactly the same manner. That's, to me, that's mind-blowing.
Too coincidental. It can't be a coincidence. There's got to be more to it, is what you're saying. Yeah.
No, that's why I was trying to figure out, well, what in the heck are they doing? And then it dawned on me, it's just like a buffet.
Yeah.
We're just an energetic buffet, and they figured out that the hotel is the perfect place to tune into. So, nowadays, and in the show, I suggested that, put like a garbage bag, a black garbage bag, just hang it over the mirror. If that light resonance can't come through that mirror, then they can't come through either.
Right. Well, makes sense.
And then I've heard back from a lot of my clients that said that that's working for them. So, I feel pretty confident that the mirror is actually being used as a portal for that light energy.
When spirits get stuck here, right? That is okay. So all of this is abnormal or other normal, right? Paranormal, whatever. But the natural transition here is to die and then go someplace else, right? Where you don't interact with this world anymore.
Well, I mean, that depends. It's all consciousness driven, like we talked about in the first episode. If you feel like your idea of heaven is to be with your family here in this plane, then that's where your consciousness pulls you naturally to, because your resonance is attracted to what you vibrate at. And if you're resonating or vibrating at the frequency to be with those people you love, that's where you're naturally drawn. But let's say you're tired of this world and you just want to be on some hill going fishing somewhere. That's where your resonance is going to be drawn to. But, the thoughts create reality at that point. Well, it's a construct. And so
it's not uncommon, right? People talk about that all the time. Like they'll go to a specific place because that's where dad's energy is, or that's where I feel closest.
Exactly.
And it's not the graveyard. It's not necessarily where they buried the person. Sometimes a lot of people will spread ashes and stuff at a specific location for that reason. But that's a common thing, yeah?
Right, it is. So not everybody wants to cross over. Not everybody wants to be reborn. It's where that consciousness, their resonance is connected to or drawn to.
So you could be you could be a spirit that's like sort of connected to a very specific place. Maybe it's a view from a mountain or a hill or something. And then some jackass comes along and builds a mall there. But you're still stuck to that. What you're kind of getting at is your energy's still sort of connected to that place. It's just that, time moved on, but you're still there kind of thing, right?
Well, but, time doesn't exist. I mean, that person who is connected to that particular location, time doesn't exist for them because they're in a state of light.
Okay.
And so they can exist in a past. I mean, we have to say past because, we're linear and we have to think that way.
Yeah.
But they can exist in a past state of consciousness. Now, changing the physical location will cause a disruption in the energy pattern of what they're existing in, and that's why a lot of spirits will really act out when you go and renovate or change the structure, because what you're changing is the energy pattern.
So when when you go out to do a cleansing, if there's a spirit attached to this, you're basically going out there to just try to encourage the spirit to sort of move on, kind of thing, and to release its connection to this time space, area that it's connected
and
to.
the first thing that I'm going to do is to try to communicate with that entity, to reason with them, to explain to them what their options are, what they need to do, where they need to go. But you know what? Some people, like you said, like I said, they're just like they were in life. And if they wouldn't have listened to you in life, they're not going to listen to you in the afterlife either. And that's when you just have to do what you have to do, and they have to go where they need to go.
So you are implying then that if they don't want to leave, that you can force this to happen sometimes, or
sometimes, yes, because I'll have people say, oh, well, I know they're disruptive, and I know that they're making life hell, but maybe we should just leave them here. Well, you know what? No, because you know what? In spirit, you don't need a building. You don't need a roof over your head. You don't need to be protected from the rain. You don't need heat and air conditioning. But in a physical body, you have to have it. And so, yeah, sometimes they have to go because they don't need the home. They don't have to have it, but as physical beings, we do. We have to have it, and we need to be comfortable.
And they have to choose to make that transition to that space and time where they want to live. That's their personal sort of utopia, right? And let go of it in
right.
Okay.
Or they need to choose to be cooperative with the family that's trying to live in peace.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had spirits that have committed suicide and have no idea that they can leave the room that they've been in for 20 years. They don't conceptualize that they can go through the door. They think they're stuck in the room, but they're not.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. But see, time doesn't exist in that realm.
Here's a quick. We're about an hour and 20 minutes, and I know I get you for an hour and a half. Okay, but
that's okay. Hour and a half is cool.
We're gonna have to do part 3. Yes, please, at some time. Okay, because I end up with more questions written down that I don't get to ask you. Right. So
I know.
Here's a good one. Or okay, you tell me if this is a good one. When you're out here interacting with these entities and these energies and spirits and things like that, have you ever considered that at some point some of them might start holding a grudge against you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And do you think that's already happening?
I think it has happened in the past, and I'll relate to you one incident that's made me feel better about my stance. I have always worked with angels, always. Now, that can be dangerous in itself because they're such powerful entities, and I've had 2 very clear experiences that have just slapped me in the face to prove to me that they exist. And so I don't doubt it. But, when I go to get energy work done, like let's say I want to go get Reiki done or I want to go get pranic healing done, and these have been different practitioners, and they did not know anything about each other. But when I go to get energy work done, the practitioners, two different practitioners have told me, I'm not allowed to work on you because there are 3 angels in robes standing over you that will not let me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I've had to mentally project, these people are okay, they can touch my energy, they can manipulate, let them through, and then I can get the work done.
So this is So what you're saying here is that you sort of have protection. You got some heavies sitting by your side.
Yeah, but see, I didn't know about it until I felt like somebody was there, but I wasn't able to see them. You know, even though I can see other spirits, I did not know that these entities were there until I was told by these two different practitioners. And the thing is that they described exactly the same vision.
Wow.
You know, 3 angel-like entities in robes standing over me.
So by that, you derive a sense of justification for reaching into these worlds, then, that you have this protection. So obviously that means that you're pursuing something here that needs to be protected.
Right. Even though I don't think I'm invincible by any means. And, you know, certainly I've had spiritual attack at night. And I've experienced demonic influences and stuff like that. But I feel better about trying to help people through this kind of stuff because I know that these entities are there. I don't think that we're invincible, but I feel better about, you know, putting my neck out there a little bit, you know?
Sure. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, things like you mentioned it, Reiki and things like that. You know, I have a good friend that's just gotten into this herself. So spirituality and stuff. Shout out to my wife's buddy there, Darcy. So
hey to Darcy.
Yeah, hey Darcy. Reiki by Darcy. So there's a lot of people connecting with the world now in a very spiritualistic or what I would consider, or for lack of a better word, would be a more enlightened approach to how they sort of view things. They looking at things from the standpoint of energy and all of this is really becoming commonplace. So it feels like, and you tell me if I'm wrong, do you feel like there's like sort of a renaissance or a rebirth of empathy, generally speaking?
I do. And I think it's needed because there are so many things that divide us in the world. And I think we need something to bring us together. And I think one of the things that I've learned is that the dark wants to destroy.
Consume.
So you really have to be careful about what you do. If anything you do is destructive to someone else, it doesn't matter what way, shape, or form. If you think it's justified, it is not. If it's destructive. Because the dark will use you to destroy someone else.
It's a very enlightened way to sort of look at things pragmatically when you consider everything as a form of energy, right? So you start to you appreciate what you put out into the world yourself, what you allow in your world.
Right. If you put out destruction, guess what you're going to get back?
Right. That's how
you're
it works.
You're going to get that back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I want to, before we finish up here, this really haunted house that you were talking about, that your friends did. Is this place still in existence? Is this something people can go
through?
Oh,
yes. It is. It's Wicked World Scare Grounds. It's on 5817 Tate's Creek Road in Lexington, Kentucky. It's a conglomerate of 3 different attractions. They have one of the attractions is called Mercy Hospital, and the other attraction is called Quarantine. It's more of a zombie-like type of theme. And then for the kids is Darkwood Carnival, and that's it's a really creepy clown kind of theme. I love Darkwood Carnival, and I love Mercy Hospital. And my husband likes the Quarantine area. So it's got different flavors for everybody. And you can go to all 3 attractions, or you can just go to 1 or 2. It depends on, what you like. And I think that they're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 7:30 to midnight. I think they close a little bit earlier on Sunday evening. But it's probably one of the best haunted houses in the tri-state area. And you just can't beat it. It's a great scare, and it actually is haunted.
Now, this ties in with your, in addition to the Monday Night Live show that you do, which is really phenomenal.
Thank you.
This also ties into this thing that you do on your social media where you put up pictures of multiple items and then have...
The Haunted a Month. It's the second Sunday of every month, and what I try to do is to, through EMF and word generator, I try to find items that are actually haunted that have some type of energy attached to them. And so what I do is I evaluate those items, I take a picture of them, but then I take a picture of 2 items that are decoys. And I post all 4 pictures, and then people have to decide with their intuition what items are haunted and what items are not. And then I do a reveal at the end of the day on what actually was haunted, if it, generated something off of the word generator, or if it didn't, or if it had EMF.
So this haunted house has items in it that have energy associated with them. So people that go,
yes.
So is there are they? Do all of the separate attractions have these items, or is there any specific ones that if people want to check this out, that's if you want to go and get a real possible haunted experience?
Well, there's 2 areas that are definitely haunted, and that's Mercy Hospital and Quarantine.
Okay. That's why you said
I don't feel anything in Darkwood Carnivals, so yeah.
Cool. I just think it'd be interesting. I mean, how many people can say they went to a haunted house that's actually got haunted things in it, and where your experience
I know.
Yeah, and you have the YouTube video to show that your experience could be otherworldly if you go check this place out. Oh man. Oh. I will not be checking it out. Much love and everything, but man, that getting the crap scared out of me. I don't do that anymore. This is enough. I'm going to have nightmares. I have to go sleep in hotels and stuff now. I'm going to be thinking about this podcast the whole time.
Just take your garbage bag with you.
Yeah, right. Well, Kathryn, is there anything else that we need to plug for you, or anything that we've maybe missed?
Just everybody check out my daily planetary influences on Facebook.
Right.
And I have a free reading every Friday. It's called Fun Friday. It's on my Facebook page. I've got my YouTube channel where all of the past episodes of Monday Night Live are logged in. And check out the Haunted Items Hunt on Facebook too. So, thanks for having me on the show. And there's lots more for episode number 3, so we'll have to get together on that.
You are a gem. I love having you on the show. I can't wait to do it again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kathryn Kauffman, psychic medium and paranormal investigator extraordinaire. Thanks for joining me on the show again. Check us out, noshitcast.com. All the links there for all the different ways you can consume podcast media. And we certainly appreciate all the likes and shares out there, especially you, Mr. Kenny Schaefer, you crazy beast, you. I love you, so keep it up, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye, Sickles. And that's it. We are clear.